Tonight has gone so well. I hope you guys are having a good time. Are you enjoying the festival? Yeah. Now I say yeah. Do you notice that? I'm really it's like sneaking into me. The Dutchness is wild. So welcome. We are having our talk. We've titled it "Keys to the Gate." We're trying to talk about curators and how they're holding space for people of color and all the things. So I'm gonna hand it over to Ayra Kip, who is going to be moderating this conversation. She'll tell you all about herself, and enjoy.
Hi, everybody. Thank you. Thank you, Nolika, for the introduction. Hi, my name is Ayra Kip. I'm an identical twin. She's 12 minutes older. If I was acting funny when you came to say hi, it's because I don't know you. You know her. So, still hugs and kisses for everybody. Thank you for the love and thank you for being here. I went to the doctor. She told me that my vocal cords are out of balance. So, I'm going to thank you for having the mic this high also. I lost my voice on Monday, and then I called Nolika or texted Nolika. I said, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. But I pushed through with a lot of ginger tea. I'm really excited to be here because these conversations that we're having and that Nolika intends to unpack are like the dinner conversations we have at my sister's house or in my house. So it's great to unpack that with like-minded people, cultural curators like yourself, people who care about the culture, our culture, Black culture. Because the panel kind of shifted as far as the people that are on the panel, I have like half of y'all bios here, but I edited it because I wanted to. Some of them were quite long, but I didn't want to. I kind of wanted to do like an equal presentation of all that you have done, but there's so much knowledge, expertise, information, legacy. I would even say iconic work that all these people together on this panel have done throughout their careers in different industries of our culture. So I want to ask each and everyone to on the panel to introduce yourself shortly because I really don't want to how do you say like under represent you. So I'm just gonna ask you just to give a short introduction, and then I want to open up this conversation with you guys about Nolika's choice for the evening, which is Keys to the Gate, is the name of the talk today, which I think is a fascinating conversation because I know I have a lot to say about gatekeeping. But it's great that I'm going to be able to do that with all of you guys. So I'm going to pass the mic down, and I just want to ask you to just share a little bit about who you are and who you represent, and also if we need to take into account any pronouns, I'm she, her. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, Ayra. Um, so my name is Aruna Vermeulen. I'm from Rotterdam, 47. I'm a mother of two small gentlemen. I'm a dancer, B-girl, and I'm one of the three founders of Hiphophuis, and I'm artistic and general director. And I really like food, so most of my ideas come through the belly.
I also like food. My name is Philip Powell. I've been working in the cultural industry since 1998. Always been booking bands for several music venues, bands that were in the so-called black music segment. I started my own live venue in 2009 called Bird, focusing on various black music. And I also started a nonprofit organization called John 106, in which I organized a poetry event called Crime Jazz, early 2000, and I founded Black Soil Film Festival in 2004. And I'm happy to be here.
My name is Maori. I live in Philadelphia, and I'm the founder and a very long title. I'm Chief Executive and Artistic Officer of Black Star Projects. One of our main projects is the Black Star Film Festival. We also have a journal called Scene, have a podcast, have a filmmaker lab, a filmmaker seminar. Before Black Star, I organized the Black Lily Film and Music Festival. I've managed a couple of artists. I'm a curator sometimes, and filmmaker sometimes. And I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Lyse, originally from Rwanda, but currently based, or unfortunately based in Brussels, Europe. I'm a film programmer. I have my own film program in Brussels called Recognition, where I screen African and African diaspora films. I've been doing that for 7 years, and I'm also a film programmer for the International Film Festival in Rotterdam, which is actually next year, January, so please come through. And yeah, my whole life is about films. Yeah.
I'm not going to take two. Yeah, this works. Great. Hi, everyone. My name is Samara, pronouns she, her. I am from London, UK. Massive. And I am a camera assistant, videographer, and filmmaker. And I guess I like program shorts now. That's why I'm here as well. I'm from Not Nowhere. We're a BIPOC-led artist cooperative, and we prioritize analog practices. I also run workshops on how to become a camera trainee for Black, Indigenous, people of color, women, trans and non-binary folks, and disabled folks. So yeah, that's my gig, and I'm very happy to be here as well. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Like I said, an amazing group of people. First question I want to ask you guys collectively, is it fair to say that we collectively represent and serve Black or BIPOC communities? Is it fair to say that? That's an honest question. Like, I just want to, do you serve and specifically hold space for BIPOC, Black? Do we collectively? Because I don't want to assume, so I want to see, are we collectively supporting, serving, holding space for?
Yeah, I think I can, yeah, speak for myself, but to get to that question, when we started Black Soil in 2004, we were in the first place serving the hip hop community. And as you know, the hip hop community in Holland is not exclusively Black. And we found out that when you're not actively trying to create a Black space, you end up in a lot of times with a white crowd. So in order to create a Black space, we actually had to change the perspective, and I think that's where we're going through now in this edition. So it's a really interesting moment for us. Actually, Noleka, my program partner, I think she's a really big part of it, and yeah, we're really trying to learn from our peers. So this is one of the reasons we have this table discussion. Yeah.
It's a question I was answering yesterday. I don't know that Black Star is intentionally creating a Black audience. So when you ask that question, that's what I think about. But the first constituency for us are our filmmakers, and we are serving Black, Brown, and Indigenous filmmakers. And so they often invite people from their communities to the festival, but it was not the initial intention to serve that audience. It was to serve those filmmakers, if that makes sense.
Yeah, sure.
For me, I mean, film is open to everybody, and African films are open to everybody. But the intention or the reason why I set up Recognition was because when I moved to Belgium, what I experienced was that I would go to African film festivals or film festival in general, and the crowd was mostly white, and I felt uncomfortable to watch my stories or my people's stories in a room full of white people, because the organizers were always white as well. And I felt calling to kind of change that and introduce something different and introduce the diaspora community in Brussels to African films, because for those of us who were born and raised on the continent, we didn't have access to African films when we grew up. And actually, the terrible thing is that most of the African films that are made are circulated in Europe and not on the continent itself. And so for me, this is the work that I do. So my intention is to create that space for Black people to experience Black art I won't say, I don't think there's ever any safe spaces, but in a safe that aims to be at least safe for that particular evening, for that particular event.
At Not Nowhere, we work specifically with analog films, so I feel like that's even more of a niche. And our co-op and our community is open to everyone, but we do make it clear that we are BIPOC-led, and we do prioritize BIPOC artists as well. So trying to hold space in that way. And this is the second program of shorts that I curated. The first one originally was analog films made by women, trans and non-binary folks, and then we noticed that that was entirely white, including the filmmakers. And that made us question that the accessibility to analog was not in our community, which is why I then did this program, which was analog short films made by BIPOC filmmakers. And then that's when the community started coming in a bit more. So yes, I would say that I actively try my best to serve our community. It's not always easy, and I don't feel like it's always achieved, but I constantly try, and so we do so at Not Nowhere. But I think that requires a lot of experimentation because we're working with analog practices which are dying out literally with the white people who gatekeep that.
Right. And I'm going to ask Aruna this question, not specifically the same question, but if you're hearing this, and I'm sure you've experienced some of what they have, because what I'm hearing is that we've had to adapt, we've had to change, we've had to think about how do we reach specific communities. Can you share with us what, if there are maybe some specific things that you had to do within your organization at Hiphophuis to hold space, and what did it mean within your context to hold space? Like, what does that look like?
So we had to make conscious decisions. When we started 21, 22 years ago, we came from a community that would reach out to our crowd, and which was mostly Black and brown, not rich, from neighborhoods that don't have a lot of cultural institutions within them that are open to hip hop, right? So that's where we started. So when we did our programming, the communities that we were aiming for would show up. Over the years, we were growing, we gained popularity, we moved to the city center, we improved our positioning, and meanwhile, our scenes are growing as well. So not just us as an organization, but also our scenes. We're on TV, we're in all sorts of areas where we weren't before when we started. So where something that came natural when we started is to reach the right crowd became something that we had to work for, that we had to strategize, that we had to make sure that our low fees, our low entry fees would reach the right people. And I wouldn't say there's a wrong people that we reach, because what we offer comes, like our house is a Black and brown house. So everybody that comes to our programming and to our everything that we have to offer, it's still the right crowd in a way, but we feel like the efforts we make and the impact we want to make is making more of an impact when it's not like a tourist. And we think that hip-hop culture will make more of an impact for people that need it more or have more space for hip-hop than other people that come to get it and think, oh, that's nice for the day, and they do something else tomorrow. So what came natural takes strategies, takes work, and takes changes in our programming. And some of that, like an example of that, is actually the Power Talk that we are holding today, is that we decided to curate the audience. So it's not open to all, but we select the people, or not us ourselves, but through friends and others, to make sure that the conversation can be on a certain level and in a certain safety.
Thank you for sharing. So one thing that came to mind as you guys were talking is if you deal with any resistance as you are creating these spaces, right? And I do agree with you a little bit about safe spaces and what does it mean, and does that really exist? But I wonder, how do people who are also interested in the work, who are not BIPOC, who are outside of the community, so to speak, do you deal with any resistance, and how do you deal with that? And I also want to share an example with you. Yesterday, for those who don't know, there's a TV network in the Netherlands. It's called Omroep Zwart. And yesterday they launched a new show, which is called That's My Jam. And today it's like a game show centered around music. And today I had a conversation with Akwasi, who was one of the founders of the network. And because I had texted him, I said, I think this is the first time that I'd seen a game show on Dutch TV where it was like 40 minutes of black joy. Like it was just black joy the whole time. And I was just like, for everything that Omroep Zwart is doing, you know, I feel like they've done some conscious things and conscious subjects around, you know, some of the docuseries that they have shared. But, you know, whatever your opinion is about the game show, I'm not really into game shows, but I was looking at the response of my children also watching these people just having fun with music and just remembering or thinking about that I didn't get that growing up, right? And so that then he was saying, yes, but now the industry is saying it's too black, right? So this has been the response the day after the show, right? And so now I'm wondering, so how do you then deal with the resistance? So he says, I think I'm just gonna ignore that. And I said, I think you have a short period of time to do what you wanna do and just maximize that time for whatever it is that you want to do. So I'm just wondering, because it's like an immediate resistance that he's experiencing now over a show that seems to be you become successful. And again, I'm not into game shows, and I don't even watch TV. I just had it on, and for me, there was just a moment of, okay, wow, everybody's happy, and my kids were standing in front of the TV. It was just a great moment. So I just wanted to ask you guys. As you are consciously, and Aruna, I'm also aware of the methods that you take. How do you deal with resistance? Do you get any resistance, and what does that look like, and how do you work around it or with that?
It's interesting. I got a remark from a Dutch friend today, who got the invite, and he was like, "Am I welcome here as a white person?" And I was actually amazed by that question, but I answered that, of course, he's welcome, but he has to realize this is not about him. We don't center him. He is not the status quo. He's not the norm. And that is, I think, for a lot of white people, a very interesting position to be at, because they're not used to that. And it's also the fact that we're having this conversation. I think there's any festival in Europe, even in Holland, worldwide, that ever have discussion about white culture, because they're always the norm. And to actively say you want to create a black space, that's a thing.
I just want to know, because there's European perspectives. I don't want to make a divide, but I wonder if, Maori, you deal with any of this. If do you get resistance coming where you from? Because I'm hearing similar thoughts and ideas from, let's say, those of us who are in European spaces, and I wonder, what is that like for you?
I was trying to think of an example when you asked the question. It's been my experience that in the cities that I have lived in, they've been quite segregated. So there's no expectation that there will be black and white people in the same room. That said, when I have been on panels that maybe aren't in a black space, like at a mainstream museum or something like that, I've definitely had people come up to me and ask a similar question to yours, Philip. Can I come to your festival? Is there a place for me? I will say that our audiences are mixed. I think that lots of people feel comfortable coming. So I don't think I've faced resistance in that way. More recently, because of our decision to be vocal about our solidarity with Palestine, there has been some resistance coming. It's not been, I'll say, major yet. We haven't had any like major funders or anything like that pull out, but I'm curious if that's going to happen. We have had some like small interpersonal things happening, donors calling board members, people on host committees dropping off, things like that have happened. But it hasn't been about the program per se. I think it's interesting for us for that to happen because our festival director's Palestinian, so we've been talking about Palestine for a long time, programming that work. It's been in our language. But I guess because in this particular moment, obviously, it's more upfront. There are people who are like, wait a minute, I didn't know y'all were doing that. But yeah, I think in general, we've definitely benefited from, I think, yeah, I don't know that in the States that expectation for white people to be comfortable is there because it's often really segregated. And so I wouldn't say that we've faced that. Another thing, though, sometimes with going for funds, because when you said BIPOC, because we're not just Black, we have had sponsors, people in like corporate situations not know what we're doing. So they'll come and they'll say, okay, well, we have this for our Black audiences. And I'm like, well, what about the Latinx and the Asian and and they're like, oh, like they don't know what to do with everybody. They only sort of like can segment, Black, Latin, everybody else. And so that has been, again, not necessarily resistance, but really just like befuddlement.
Right,
like they don't know, they're like confused.
Yes.
And so that's been interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. It also ties into capitalism, and I was gonna ask you about how that works in Brussels, because okay, so resistance is on one side, but has doing what you do, serving BIPOC, has it also served you for the better, in the same area of people who also have shown their resistance? I don't want to necessarily say white people, but funders, or because in the Netherlands, there's a tendency that when we call something Black, when we try to get money from the government, and we call something Black or BIPOC, that it could help us. So even right now, we are in a space in the Netherlands where every 4 years our government gives out funding for the arts, and it goes over for the next 4 years. And so one of the things that we are experiencing as cultural creatives is that all the white organizations are calling us so that we can be mentioned in their proposals. So it's also serving on the other hand. So I wonder, how do you experience that in Brussels and
Yes.
and Maori? Could you guys unpack that a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. But for me, with recognition, it's a program that I've had for 7 years, and I self-fund it because I didn't want to deal with funders, and I didn't want to deal with government, and I didn't want to deal with white people, frankly, telling me what to do. So I've done this program on my own, and I've had 2 or 3 jobs just to be able to make it through. But generally, the reception of it has been very welcoming, and also I feel like because of the way that I curated and because of the way that the people who show up, they show up in good spirit, it has generally been okay, and it's a mixed crowd. But I did have one incident. There was a film that I showed. I don't want to mention the film because that was maybe one mistake that I made in my programming out of my entire career, but I'm not going to mention the director. But anyway, at the end of this film, there was a Black woman who said because it was a very emotional film, and it ended with basically the main characters, the main Black characters dying. And there was a huge, huge pain with the audience. And I remember one woman, a Black woman, was like, I would really prefer if all the white people would leave the cinema right now, because the conversations I would like to have are with each other. And there was confusion at the beginning because it was like, wait, what's happening? And eventually, one by one, the white people started leaving the cinema room. And there were a few who, of course, some of them came with their Black partners, so it was a bit like, baby, should I? It was very confusing, but in the end, we did have a conversation between us. But as soon as I went out of the cinema, the white people were starting to complain to the owner. They were actually outside complaining, and we received emails, and we received complaints that we were racist and we were discriminatory and whatever.
And did you and everybody in your organization, were you all totally comfortable with what was going on?
I mean, I thought it was brave for this particular audience member to ask for this. Mm-hmm. And it made me also reflect on the way that I program and also the films that I choose. Mm-hmm. Because that particular film taught me of the impact a film can have on Black audiences. Mm-hmm. And I told myself, if ever I would have to have such a film, I would not do it in mixed company. Yep. So that was a great learning lesson for me, and on how to just be a better programmer and how to take care of the people, because art is art, but it's meaningful for us in a different way to white audiences. And in terms of funding, and perhaps in the future I will apply for public funding, but I think with the way that the politics is now, and with more and more right-wing government, I don't think anybody's going to be giving me money. Mm-hmm. And I'm okay with that. Yeah. I'm okay with that. I think it's important to kind of keep some things to ourselves.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, this is actually, it's a great example, because I think this is what Nolika envisioned when you speak about gatekeeping, right? Because this is also gatekeeping, and gatekeeping in a positive way, which also means not just using your influence and power to make something exclusive, but also to protect something. And I think that is also something that's, in some sense, also brave, because you could also be in an organization, big or small, where not everybody in your organization actually is comfortable with that, right? With the gatekeeping that you're holding. So, Maori, I just wanted to ask if you wanted to add. I just felt like maybe you wanted to share something in this regard, or
about the funding and for White Season,
you call it White Season. It's called White Season.
No, I mean the thing you were saying about your 4-year funding and being asked. I don't know that I had anything to add. Okay. I think I was just sort of thinking about like, wow, like to get funding for 4 years.
I know, right?
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
I also get those same calls all the time. There have been organizations that I duck because I know we're going to be up in their annual report, you know.
Yes.
But I don't remember the beginning part of your question because I got caught up in her story.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
No, I thought that I missed that you wanted to add something, but I just want to check with Nolika as far as time. Do we get to open it to the audience already, or yeah, go on.
Yeah, I think we were having a very interesting conversation about the kind of funding that we received after BLM, and I
Yes.
think that would be a nice story to share.
That was actually on my mind when we started talking about funding, because I get the newsletters from BLM like every week, and there was a whole conversation about BLM money also that
Yes,
yeah.
the BLM money that is running dry.
Is it running dry?
Yes.
Is it?
Yes. I mean, and it was in Brussels, and I think it actually was in a lot of places. I think the US, Europe, where like people were donating to us.
Yes.
Random people were donating to us. 2021, 2022.
Yes.
We were getting money, funding, donations. It was based out of guilt or whatever. And right now, it's like, I think you mentioned it well. It's like, okay, well, racism is over, guys. Give, no more money for you.
Right. We've solved the problem.
Yeah, we've solved
of
the
race
problem.
relations. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's for me, it's still very interesting, and I'm still reflecting on that kind of shift that happened. And now it's completely dipping, and now we have Palestine, and I'm very curious as to, and now, I mean, with Palestine, it's even worse because it's like complete cancellations
Right.
of everything.
Yes.
And so I'm not sure how 2024, 2025 looks for us.
Yeah.
And I'm a bit worried about it.
You're worried.
Yeah.
Does anybody else on this panel share that worry? Do you share that worry? Yeah.
I definitely share that worry. Black Star operated as a festival. I started in 2012, having other day jobs, several, and did Black Star from 2012 to 2019 on the side. And then in 2020, launched Black Star Projects as the larger organization. We had 5 people. We had a budget of just under $1 million. Now we have 21 people and a budget over 5 million. And so it's like quite a lot of growth, a lot of it in part due to the post
BLM.
George Floyd.
Yeah.
I mean, BLM for us, I feel like starts in 2013 with Trayvon Martin's death, but I think George Floyd's death really like set off a kind of guilt giving in a way that, so a lot of that, like, Juneteenth becoming a holiday, like all the stuff that happened in 2020, that's so ridiculous.
A lot.
But there's a funder that, I won't say his name in this space, but I want to cite him. I'll say his name because he should be cited if you reuse this. But he's called this like a racial justice recession is on the way. And so there are so many people who, we got grants from people we never heard of. I have a family foundation. I don't know how things work here, but in the US, one of the ways for wealthy people to, like sort of hold on to their money and hide it is put it in a foundation.
Yes, the same.
So random Joe Schmo foundation, here's $100,000, and then those people never come back to you. So that's not a sustainable income. But we had lots of those. And so, seeking counsel from other people, we were like, what do we do with this? We invest in people. The bigger foundations will hopefully meet us. But it's scary because they may not, they can change their minds at any time. It's a very, very challenging model. And I think for me as the, sort of the man, I have these 20 people whose lives I have to make sure are happening is very, very scary.
Yeah.
And I think in particular around Palestine, I've been sort of like very concerned that like I feel personally like I could mess this up for everybody.
Yes.
But at the same time, all of my team were all on the same page. So I think, I hope that the younger folks know that this is like a gamble.
Yep.
But we'll see at the same time.
Totally hear you. I also feel like with the whole Palestine thing, it's and I'm sorry to have to say the Palestine thing with respect, but morality and legality become conflated. So sometimes we get like what's happening now with the presidents of the universities. I don't know if you guys know about it, but some of the major universities in the United States, the presidents had to resign, and they had to come to Congress to answer questions about their stance on Palestine. And mind you, when you're in Congress, you're asked legal questions, and they answered also, they gave legal answers, but there was such a need for moral answers, right? So it just becomes so conflated, and everybody's walking a thin line, and it's like, they're so quick to, like, you're gonna just not lose your job, but your whole legacy of what you built. And I find that that's really tricky and scary. Before I open it up to the audience, I wanted to ask a question to my Dutch folks, which is, I thought it was interesting. You said you think there's a social justice recession going on. I think that we haven't really figured out social justice philanthropy yet, that we are now kind of stepping into it. And I just wanted to get some feedback from Philip and Aruna, how they feel about it. And it's also my experience. I didn't actually even say what I do, but I'm a cultural creator and a fundraiser. So one of the things that I'm noticing as a fundraiser is that now people are starting to become more aware about funding Black organizations, Black and BIPOC, I should say, initiatives and of those sorts. So I just wonder, she said that, how do you feel about it? Do you think that we are going that way, or you think that we're still in a moment where we are still getting money?
We are there already, and every day we're gonna see the effects of what is happening. So the regression, it's a understatement.
No, recession. You said
Of recession,
right?
yeah,
So
it's an
I think
understatement.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
all
you
of the
think-
arts and culture,
Yeah.
and then I feel like the funding we have received as Hiphophuis for the last 22 years has never been because of of the understanding of our artistic practice. None of the funders really have this understanding of our artistic meaning, but they have supported us because there weren't other organizations that would reach this audience. Now, years later, there's a lot more of audiences, and also the people that decide have changed. So we hope that our artistic vision is seen more than before. And at the end of the day, we also realize that if the funding for the arts in general is going to decrease, then we're the first ones to go. Yeah, because now our growth was a lot of it was also fueled by the diversity standards that have been put on the arts scene, and that's something that's gonna go real quick. Yeah.
Philip, any thoughts on this?
No, I just think we should realize how much of our cultural approach and way we adapt it in Holland is surrounded by whiteness. It is in the cultural houses where we do our events. It's in the Western view on the way we look at culture. And obviously, it's also to do with the way we finance this culture. And you're not allowed to bite the hand that feeds you. So I've actually noticed it with Hiphophuis. Like when you get to a certain point in Holland, you get into this weird dynamic because you are part of this white system, and you move just in a different way. And yeah, that's a difficult position to be in. You're in Holland. You're able to reach to a certain point, and then it gets tricky.
Yeah.
Then it gets difficult.
There's certain codes that we then have to navigate to. I feel like there's like a whole nother system or infrastructure built, and also what I feel as a fundraiser, but also I'm in a committee of one of the Royal Art Funds, and one of the things that I see is that when you've reached a certain level, which is considered quite high on the government side, don't think you're going to get any higher. So there's still this idea of, you know what, you BIPOC Black person, you cannot make more than this. Like there's a ceiling, you know. And I've seen that as a fundraiser, but also on the other side, being on the committee of one of these royal art funds and how we spend our money and the criteria that we set for organizations. With some of them, I'll mention this actually. I'm on a committee for, it's a really crazy name in English, but the slavery budget. It's slavernij. How do you say? It's a herdenking slavernij. So the commemoration of the transatlantic slave trade. I'm on one of the 5 committee members. First of all, the budget is way too low. And also the narrative is that the budget is really high, right? So it's like it's 5 million. But what they didn't say is for 7 countries, because the Netherlands is the Netherlands and 6 islands, right? So there's this idea of how much money do these organizations get to have? How much are you entitled to, right? So me and the committee, actually, what we've done, is it being recorded? It's fine. I got till May anyway. I'm contracted till May. But what we've done as a committee, we're 5 Black women. What we've done is we've set our own codes, right? So we've decided as a group, we're going to be flexible in certain areas. We're going to bend. If you're like, a standard proposal is like 10 pages, we'll get a proposal from Curacao with 2 pages. And we'll be like, well, we can read and we can feel the vision. So just to say, like, I see what's going on, but that's a problem for me. You know, it's a problem for me because I think, you know, this is also what Aruna was speaking to, is that once you get on that, in that level, there's different codes, and it's also like the rules are different, right? But the rules are not the same for us as our peers in that same infrastructure. So it's an interesting sector to be in. I want to open this conversation to the audience because I think we have about 10 minutes left. Right, so are there any questions?
Hi, my name is Rissy Latouche. My question is about how you think about who you take money from. So for context, I have a marketing agency that I'm building right now. And one of the things that I think a lot about is that when I started this, I built it so that I could find a place where I could have a healthy work environment and do the work that I enjoy without dealing with the politics of like being in the upper corporate world. But when I think about who I have to reach out to for help, I work with startups. So the people I have to reach out to are investors, and they're the people with the money, right? But it's like with what's happening in Palestine right now, we know it's like happening to protect money interests. And then some of the people that I've thought about reaching out to in the past are the people who are on LinkedIn posting like, I stand with Israel and all of these things. And I really struggle with the balance of knowing that the people who have that money for a reason, and they've probably gotten it through, you know, immoral ways, because you can't amass that much money without doing something screwed up at some point. So how do you think about the balance between kind of taking money from the people who have it and how you choose who you'll actually work with and take money from?
Yeah, great question. Anybody want to answer that?
My usual response to that is that all of the money that exists right now is all slave trading paper, right? Like we know that that is where it comes from initially. So I'm always like, what are you asking me to do for the money? That's the question for me more than where it comes from. It's what do I have to do for it? Because sometimes I've experienced that someone will give you money and walk away and they're not checking what you do with it. They're not asking for it. They don't even want their name on it. And that's the kind of money that I
like that money too.
But then, you know, sometimes people give you a small amount and it costs a lot of your time, and then they want all these things from you, and it's like, so that's more of what I'm concerned with. There are decisions that we have made sort of informally that we would not take money from the US Army because they want a lot from you and we don't agree with what they want. But like I would take money from an alcohol company, you know? And so I think it's sort of like your own moral lines, but also for me, it's all dirty. So I don't feel like, unless there's like some real recent dirty, right? Like would I take money from the Sacklers? I can't say no here because I might, especially if they were giving it to me and didn't want anything.
Yeah, great answer.
I mean, I can't speak to. I agree completely with you. But just to quote, my best friend always tells me this thing because I always have this battle as well of like, who am I getting money from and that kind of thing. My best friend always tells me that money in the hands of good people can change the world, and like it, like you said, it is like your intention of how are you going to rearrange the history of that money. I think that's an important thing to say.
Great answers. Any other questions? Any other questions? Yes, sure.
We're talking about like, oh, sorry. I think you're doing very well. I think you're very sexy, like. Love it. No, we are talking about like government money all the time, but we are like black people in the same room, right? Okay, if you look at like, for instance, the Dutch national team, I get my money there because my brothers are playing on the field and working their asses off, making a lot of money every game they play. Why did nobody of us thought about asking them for money? Excuse me? Yeah, no, I'm doing it because the thing is, if I have to do something and it's for big money, I go to the big money people with my color, right? So we have to look close to home than watching for the white man to give you a handout and then tell you shit about the handout that you get. We have to stop that.
I think you're making a great point. I think it's really great to get money that's coming from our own community. The problem with it oftentimes is that even the people from our community are not as open or transparent about the fact that they have that money and that no, listen, I can give you a list of 10 people of color with a lot of money, and also women, actually, not just men, but a lot of black women who have money. But I'm just saying, and this is maybe not something that is because of their color, but also because how our tax system works. I think you mentioned it earlier. A lot of people don't want to necessarily be on the radar that they are philanthropists or making money. But I think you make a good point. Thank you for sharing that. So, any other questions? No, nobody? No, Lika, do you have a question? You can ask a question. Yes, ask a question.
No, but questions. I mean, I think the thing that's coming up for me as like hearing all of you talk is like, what would I just like a last question of like, you're in different stages of development, right? Like some people have been doing it for 7 years, some people have been doing it for 2 years, some people are doing it for 20, like different amounts of time. And I just like, I'm all about, I just want to share the knowledge. So if there's something that you have learned over that time, because and some of us here are just starting around like, yeah, what you wish you knew or what you want to offer around like how you hold space for people of color, now that in many ways you are, you are the gatekeepers, right? Like you're holding that in between the funders and the money and like the platform, like allowing a platform. Yeah.
I think that's also a great question. I'm going to also answer it. I just want to say for me, it's everybody on your team got to be on the same page. If you have one person in your organization that's like, I'm not really comfortable with us being all black people or like pro this, like, then, it's like we call in Dutch lossenschroeven, like a table on, that's loose. So that's been my experience. Like everybody in your team needs to be comfortable with choosing that route.
I hear your question a little bit different, and I think when it comes to gatekeeping, I try to also think in how can you create space rather than thinking about gates, but about opening the doors for more of us. And our vision was never to be the biggest house that we could be, but to change the landscape. And that's to not have a big, huge hip hop house or even a hip hop street, but to have a lot of initiatives that have different angles and different views and different crowds. And I think that's also, we are so always thinking about growing. How can we be bigger? How can we grow, make more money, have more staff, have more? And I think we're trying to think about how can we as a community be a lot of things rather than one big thing.
Yeah, a lesson I learned at quite a late stage, which is actually quite a simple lesson, and that is to be pro-black doesn't necessarily mean you're anti-white. The reason I'm saying this because I got a lot of pushback from the black community actually in Holland, saying that I was excluding white people by creating black spaces from black, yeah, from the black community. Interesting, right? Yeah, yeah, and it's not that, and I explained them that I don't necessarily want white people to feel uncomfortable. I want black people to feel very comfortable. And the result of that could be that white people feel uncomfortable. It could be, the same result, but it's a different approach. And yeah, I want to mention that because it took me a while to understand that, and it actually helped me to feel more comfortable by creating a black space.
I'm trying to think of, you're like, what have you learned? And I'm still learning, but also I've been doing this for 25 years. So I'm trying to think of like one thing to say. There is something that came to me though with your ask about, asking wealthy black people. I feel two ways about it. One is that a lot of the wealthy black people that I know, everyone is asking them all the time in the US. And so it is not an easy thing to like go to someone that you know is being asked all the time. And the other thing is that my experience with black people means is that what they have to do with that money is very different than what white people have to do with that same money, because it's, just we know historically, structurally, it's the first time we had it. And so even if you're a billionaire, where your billions have to go is very different. I always use this example of an ex who, is making a lot of money as a lawyer, but he's supporting his wife's mother, his brother's kid. I mean, it's like 8 people, whereas his colleague, the grandparents are paying the tuition of the kids. You know what I mean? So like where that money goes is so very different. So I feel like that's always important to consider. But I think the thing that came to me first when you asked about what, is that I think about for Black and brown and indigenous artists is that we often, either as creators or even as cultural workers, when we're making programs, we're responding to funding calls or we're responding to what people think we should do. And I really hope, and I'm looking at you as the young person on the panel, that you just do what you want to do and eventually those resources will come to you. Yeah. If they don't, then, I'm not gonna say, oh well, but I just feel like don't like bend your program or bend your ideas because they will change. And eventually what you're doing will be trendy or, available. And so that's something I've seen people do, and that's very frustrating to watch because, we'll get like the same kind of application for something or the same kind of films will come in and you can tell people are just doing it because they think that's the way to get on. And it's like, if you just stay true to yourself, no matter what, that's the way to sort of move forward. The other thing that I'll say, and my friend Rashida's in the audience and he'll appreciate this. And also I'm gonna bungle this quote, which I do all the time, but Rashida introduced to me this idea of like shadow careers. And so there are some of us who want to be artists and we instead begin doing cultural work instead of pursuing the form that we really want. And so I would say, don't do that. Like if you wanna be a filmmaker, don't start a festival. And I'll leave it at that.
Amazing, I love that. I think what I can say is that working in the film industry, working in festivals, working in art, working in culture is a very demanding job. We are never paid enough. We work all the time. We're freelancers, meaning we don't have, I don't think I'll have a pension. I don't know where my money is gonna come from in 3 years from now. But what I do know is that the work I'm doing matters. And it matters because I am surrounded by good people. And I think surrounding yourself and being inspired by people around you is so important. And it helps you keep on going. And it helps you keep on creating work that means something, that changes something. So for me, I think my biggest lesson is that after 7 years of doing this, and I'm hoping that I leave this earth doing what I do, is that just have moments like this where you can learn, be open to meeting different people. And when you receive that email that is asking you to do something, that be part of a panel, that you just challenging you, say yes. Say yes to it, because that is something that you need to do to understand yourself better, to understand your craft, to understand your programming. When that woman stood up and said, I want to have this conversation about Black people, I could have said, no, this is an open space, let's keep it mixed. But I gave her that space and I learned so much from it. So that open mind to just learning as much as you can is what I think makes me a programmer, and it keeps me loving my job, because as I said, this job is not paying me a lot, but it's the love of it that keeps me going.
Thank you. I feel bad being last because I feel like whatever I'm going to say is going to sound really shit, but like, I'm really just echoing what everyone else said. I believe that the right of revolution is intersectionality, which does mean that I think it requires, in order to show up for your community, I think it requires you to be patient, and I think it requires you to really listen. And in terms of like holding space for my community, I think it's important that I'm never doing it alone. I don't want to be lonely at the top. Do you know what I mean? That's not what I'm trying to get to. So basically, like everyone was saying, opening more doors for other people, sharing the skills. And then also because of the sensitivity around, I want to say diverse communities as well, there's going to be backlash within that as well. So being prepared for something like that, like the conversation isn't always going to be smooth. But that's also the point. There's a lot of history that we need to undo and that we need to change. So personally, I feel like showing up for my community also means starting niche. And then hopefully people in that community are going to open up their communities. And then it's going to be, I don't think it has to be a thing where we have to fill the room with millions of people, because the conversation, no one's going to hear anyone. But yeah, just like you're saying, I find it very difficult to not be myself. So I feel like, yeah, I always want to move forward with authenticity. And that's also what I want to tell my peers as well, in terms of trying anything new, or in terms of trying anything that's like politically progressive for the BIPOC community. But yeah, I'm also a student of life, and I hope that I can be for the rest of my life. But yeah, I think the biggest thing I've learned is like, if there's no love in it, there's no point, you know? So that's it.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for these great answers. Thank you for the great question, Olika. Thank you to the audience for listening and being here. Thank you for your time. I hope you were inspired, you left with something. And yeah, see you next time. Thank you.